Sometimes a single gust of wind can reveal the true character of a man. That was the sentence people would repeat for weeks after the video went viral. But on that bright Tuesday morning in Manhattan, no one on Fifth Avenue had any idea they were about to witness a moment millions would later replay again and again. The sun reflected sharply off the glass walls of Carter Tower, a 48-story building that stood like a mirror above the city traffic. Black sedans lined the curb, reporters clustered near the entrance, and employees hurried past with coffee cups in hand as the late-morning breeze swept down the street between the skyscrapers. It was the kind of wind New Yorkers barely noticed anymore, the kind that tugged at coats and scattered loose papers across the sidewalk. Lily Harper noticed it, though. She felt it the second she stepped out of the subway station half a block away, the chill brushing against her legs as she walked quickly along the crowded sidewalk. Lily was 24. Carrying a canvas tote bag over her shoulder that held a small sketchbook and a few pencils she refused to leave home without. Her dress was simple, light blue cotton, the kind you could buy for less than $30 at a clearance rack in Brooklyn. She had chosen it that morning because it felt comfortable and because it made her believe, even for a moment, that maybe the day would go her way. She had a job interview scheduled at a small design studio 3 blocks from Carter Tower, and she was already 10 minutes early, which for Lily counted as a small victory. Around her, the city moved at its usual impatient rhythm. A taxi honked. A delivery truck rattled past. 2 tourists argued over directions near a street sign. Lily paused for a moment at the corner while the pedestrian signal blinked red, shifting the strap of her tote bag on her shoulder and glancing up at the massive glass building across the street. Carter Tower. Even people who had never met the man knew the name Ethan Carter. Billionaire entrepreneur. CEO, the kind of person whose face appeared on magazine covers next to words like visionary and disruptor. Lily had seen him once on a news segment while eating microwave noodles in her tiny studio apartment. Back then she had laughed softly and said to herself, people like that live in a different universe. The crosswalk light flicked to white. People began moving. Lily stepped forward with the crowd, the wind curling suddenly between the buildings like a restless tide. It happened so quickly she barely understood it at first. The gust rushed down the avenue with surprising force, tugging at coats, rattling a newspaper stand, and lifting the edges of her dress before she could react. Lily froze in shock for half a second, instinctively grabbing the fabric with both hands as her face flushed bright red. Around her, conversation stopped. A few heads turned. Someone let out a surprised laugh. The moment felt enormous, like the entire street had suddenly slowed to watch her struggle against the wind. Embarrassment flooded through her chest. She tried to steady the dress, tried to step out of the gust, but the wind twisted again, playful and relentless. For Lily Harper, a girl who already felt invisible most days, it was the worst kind of attention. Cameras from a nearby press group lifted slightly, curious. A few people whispered, and then, before the moment could stretch any longer, a shadow stepped forward between her and the crowd. A tall man in a charcoal suit moved without hesitation, removing his dark wool coat in one smooth motion and gently placing it around Lily's shoulders. The coat was warm and heavy, falling almost to her knees as he wrapped it securely so the wind could no longer tug at her dress. More importantly, he stood directly in front of her, blocking the curious eyes of the sidewalk behind him like a quiet wall. Lily blinked in surprise, clutching the coat as her heartbeat slowly settled. She looked up at the man who had stepped between her and the world. Ethan Carter didn't say a word at first. He simply adjusted the coat lightly on her shoulders and glanced toward the curious crowd with a calm expression that made the whispers fade almost instantly. Then he looked back at her, offering a small, reassuring smile. "Take your time," he said softly. "The wind doesn't get to decide how your day goes." Lily Harper would remember that sentence for the rest of her life. Lily Harper stood frozen for a moment beneath the warmth of the heavy wool coat, the city noise slowly returning around her as the wind drifted down the avenue and disappeared between the towers. Her hands still held the front of the coat closed, her heart beating fast as the embarrassment that had flooded her only seconds earlier began to fade into something quieter and stranger. The man standing in front of her had created a small island of calm in the middle of a busy Manhattan sidewalk. For a few seconds no one spoke. A delivery truck rolled past. A taxi horn echoed down the block. The curious crowd that had paused to stare moments earlier began to lose interest and continue on their way. Ethan Carter glanced briefly toward the street, then back at Lily with the same calm expression that had settled the crowd. He did not appear rushed, even though two men in suits stood near the entrance of Carter Tower watching him carefully, clearly aware that their boss had paused his schedule. Lily finally found her voice, though it came out softer than she expected. "Thank you," she said quietly, still holding the coat around her shoulders. "I am so sorry about that. I did not expect the wind to do that." Ethan gave a small shake of his head, as if dismissing the entire incident. "There is nothing to apologize for," he replied. "The wind happens to everyone in this city." Lily let out a nervous laugh, glancing down at the sidewalk before looking back up at him. She had seen photographs of Ethan Carter before, but standing only a few feet away from him felt strangely different. In magazines, he looked distant and polished, like someone who belonged on a stage far away from ordinary people. Here on the sidewalk, he simply looked like a tall man with thoughtful eyes and a steady presence that made the chaos of the street feel quieter. "I should probably give your coat back," Lily said after a moment, carefully adjusting the fabric. Ethan looked briefly at the light breeze still moving between the buildings and then back at her. "You should keep it for a few minutes longer," he said gently. "The wind might not be finished yet." Lily hesitated, unsure whether to argue, but something about the calm confidence in his voice made her nod instead. "Thank you," she repeated, this time with a small, grateful smile. Across the sidewalk, a reporter lifted a phone slightly, recognizing the face of the man standing in front of her. A quiet murmur spread among a few nearby pedestrians as they realized who had just stepped into the moment. Lily noticed the whispers and felt a new wave of nervousness creep into her chest. She had not realized until that moment that the man who had helped her so casually was one of the most recognizable business leaders in the city. Her eyes widened slightly. "Wait, are you Ethan Carter?" she asked carefully. Ethan gave a small, amused smile, as though he had hoped the moment might remain anonymous a little longer. "Sometimes," he answered with quiet humor. Lily immediately felt her cheeks warm again, though for a completely different reason this time. "I am really sorry," she said quickly. "I did not mean to cause a scene in front of your building." Ethan glanced around at the normal rhythm of the street that had already resumed. "There is no scene here," he said calmly. "Just a windy morning in Manhattan." Lily exhaled slowly, realizing the world had not ended after all. She adjusted the coat again and stepped slightly toward the curb where the breeze felt calmer. "I should probably get going," she said. "I have a job interview in about 10 minutes, and I am already nervous enough." Ethan raised an eyebrow slightly with interest. "A job interview," he said. "That sounds important." Lily nodded. "It is. At least I hope so." He studied her expression for a moment, noticing the quiet determination behind her nervousness. Then he gave a small nod toward the direction she had been walking. "In that case," he said with a warm tone, "do not let a little wind slow you down today." Lily smiled again, feeling strangely encouraged by a man she had met only 30 seconds earlier. "I will not," she said. "And thank you again for the coat." Ethan stepped slightly aside, allowing her a clear path forward as the sidewalk opened ahead of her. Lily took a few steps, then paused and turned back, still holding the coat around her shoulders. For a moment, their eyes met again through the bright reflection of the glass tower behind him. It was a small moment that would have seemed ordinary to anyone watching, but something about it stayed with Ethan long after she continued down the street and disappeared into the moving crowd of Manhattan. Lily Harper hurried the rest of the way down the avenue, still wrapped in the oversized charcoal coat that felt far too expensive for someone like her to be wearing. The fabric brushed softly against her legs as she walked, warm and reassuring against the lingering breeze that still slipped through the tall Manhattan buildings. For a moment, she considered turning back to return it immediately, but the thought of walking up to the entrance of Carter Tower again and facing the man she had just spoken to made her heart race even faster. Instead, she tightened the coat around herself and continued toward the small design studio 3 blocks away. The city around her had already swallowed the strange moment as if it had never happened. Pedestrians rushed past with briefcases and coffee cups. A man argued loudly into his phone while crossing the street. A street vendor shouted prices for hot pretzels. Yet Lily could not shake the feeling that something unusual had just happened to her on an otherwise ordinary morning. She replayed the moment in her mind while walking. The calm voice, the warm coat, the way he had stepped between her and the crowd without hesitation. She had expected someone like Ethan Carter to feel distant and intimidating, the way powerful people usually appeared on television. Instead, he had seemed almost normal, thoughtful even. Lily shook her head gently as she reached the corner where a narrow brick building displayed a small metal sign that read Hudson Street Creative Studio. The office occupied the second floor above a quiet bookstore, and the entrance smelled faintly of paper and fresh coffee drifting from a cafe next door. Lily glanced down at the coat again before stepping inside. The receptionist looked up from her desk and blinked in surprise at the sight of the elegant wool coat wrapped around Lily's simple blue dress. "Good morning," the receptionist said politely. "Can I help you?" Lily offered a slightly nervous smile. "Yes, I have an interview scheduled at 11 for the junior design assistant position." The receptionist nodded and gestured toward a small waiting area near the window. "Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." Lily thanked her and sat down carefully, still wrapped in the coat. Only then did she notice the weight of something inside one of the pockets pressing lightly against her hand. Curious, she slipped her fingers into the pocket and felt a smooth rectangular object. She pulled it out slowly. It was a simple business card made from thick ivory paper. The letters were printed in clean black ink. Ethan Carter, Chief Executive Officer, Carter Global Holdings. Lily stared at the card for a moment as her eyes widened slightly. She had not even realized the card was inside the coat when he placed it around her shoulders. A quiet laugh escaped her lips as she leaned back in the chair. Of course, the billionaire CEO would have business cards in the pockets of his coat. She placed the card carefully on top of her tote bag beside her sketchbook, promising herself she would return the coat later that day if she could somehow find the courage to walk back to Carter Tower. Across town, inside the upper floors of that very building, Ethan Carter stepped into the quiet interior of the executive elevator while his assistant Daniel followed closely behind with a tablet in hand. The doors slid shut and the elevator began its smooth climb toward the private offices above the city. Daniel glanced down at the tablet before speaking. "Your next meeting begins in 10 minutes with the board from Westbridge Investments," he said. Ethan nodded absently, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. Through the reflection in the elevator's glass panel, he could still see the memory of a young woman standing in the wind on Fifth Avenue, clutching a borrowed coat around her shoulders and trying very hard not to feel embarrassed in front of a crowd. He did not know why the moment stayed with him so clearly. He only knew that when the elevator reached the top floor and the doors opened, the first thing he asked his assistant was a question Daniel did not expect. Did anyone happen to see which direction that girl walked after she left? Daniel blinked once as the elevator doors opened onto the quiet executive floor, clearly surprised by the question. In the 5 years he had worked for Ethan Carter, the man had never once asked about a stranger on the street. Ethan usually moved through the city with a kind of focused precision, every minute of his schedule accounted for, every decision measured in numbers, strategy, and long-term impact. Yet now he stood in the hallway outside his office looking thoughtful, as if the answer actually mattered. Daniel glanced down at his tablet before replying carefully. "I believe she walked east on 47th Street, he said. "Toward Hudson." Ethan nodded slowly, absorbing the information even though he did not immediately explain why he had asked. Through the wide windows behind him, Manhattan stretched in every direction, sunlight reflecting off towers and traffic far below. Daniel hesitated before speaking again. "Should I have someone locate her?" he asked. The question was practical, almost routine. Carter Global Holdings had entire departments capable of finding information within minutes. Ethan considered it for a moment, then shook his head lightly. "No," he said. "That will not be necessary." The answer surprised Daniel even more than the question had. Ethan turned toward his office, but as he reached the door, he paused briefly. For a second, the memory of the young woman standing in the wind returned to him again, the way she had tried to keep her dignity while strangers stared. He had seen many people in difficult situations during his years in business, but something about her quiet determination had felt genuine in a way he could not easily explain. Inside the office, Daniel began reviewing the morning agenda while Ethan stood near the window overlooking Fifth Avenue. The board meeting with Westbridge Investments started exactly on schedule 10 minutes later. 6 executives took their seats around the long polished table while financial projections appeared on the screen at the far wall. Numbers, charts, and market forecasts filled the discussion as the meeting moved forward with careful precision. Yet, even while Ethan spoke about expansion plans and investment strategy, a small part of his attention remained elsewhere. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, Lily Harper sat in the waiting area of Hudson Street Creative Studio, trying to steady her breathing. The borrowed coat still rested around her shoulders, making her look far more elegant than she actually felt. The receptionist called her name 20 minutes later, and Lily followed her down a narrow hallway into a small office where 2 designers sat behind a desk covered in sample sketches and digital tablets. One of them, a woman with short brown hair and reading glasses, smiled politely. "Lily Harper, correct. Thank you for coming in today." Lily nodded and sat down, placing her tote bag carefully beside her chair. As the interview began, she answered each question as clearly as she could, describing her design classes, the freelance work she had tried to build, and her dream of one day illustrating book covers or gallery posters. The conversation flowed steadily for nearly half an hour. At one point, the interviewer glanced at the charcoal coat wrapped neatly around Lily's shoulders and smiled. "That is a very nice coat," she said casually. Lily looked down at it and laughed softly, slightly embarrassed again. "It actually belongs to someone else," she explained. "I had an unexpected run-in with the wind this morning." The interviewers chuckled politely, assuming she meant nothing more than a funny story about the unpredictable Manhattan weather. They could not possibly know that only a few blocks away the owner of that coat was sitting at the head of a boardroom table while executives discussed a $10 million investment deal. By the time the interview ended, Lily stepped back onto the sidewalk feeling cautiously hopeful. She still held the ivory business card carefully inside her tote bag, and the coat still rested around her shoulders. She looked toward the direction of Carter Tower in the distance and whispered quietly to herself, "I should probably return this before the day ends." Lily Harper stood on the sidewalk outside Hudson Street Creative Studio for a moment, letting the afternoon light settle around her while the quiet hum of the city continued in every direction. The interview had gone better than she expected. One of the designers had even complimented the illustrations inside her sketchbook, pausing longer than usual to examine a page where Lily had drawn a detailed view of a Manhattan skyline at sunset. For the first time in weeks, Lily allowed herself to feel a small sense of hope. She adjusted the charcoal coat again and glanced down at the tote bag hanging from her shoulder. Inside the bag, the ivory business card rested beside her sketchbook like a small reminder that the day had taken a strange turn she still did not fully understand. She pulled the card out again and studied the clean black lettering. Ethan Carter, Chief Executive Officer, Carter Global Holdings. The name alone carried a certain weight in New York City. She had grown up reading articles about entrepreneurs like him in magazines left behind on subway seats. People who built companies, shaped industries, and appeared on television discussing the future of technology or global markets. Lily smiled softly to herself, shaking her head in quiet disbelief. A few hours ago, she had been standing on the sidewalk struggling with the wind, and now she was wearing the coat of one of the most powerful business leaders in the city. She slipped the card carefully back into her bag and began walking toward the direction of Carter Tower. The city blocks passed slowly beneath her steps. Food carts filled the air with the smell of roasted nuts and grilled sandwiches. Office workers hurried past carrying laptops and iced coffee cups. The wind that had caused so much trouble earlier had softened now into a light afternoon breeze that barely stirred the flags hanging from nearby buildings. As Lily approached Fifth Avenue, the glass towers ahead reflected the sunlight so brightly that she had to squint for a moment. Carter Tower rose above the street like a polished mirror, its entrance framed by tall metal doors and quiet security guards standing nearby. Lily slowed her pace as she reached the corner. Suddenly, the idea of walking inside the building felt much more intimidating than she had expected. This was not simply an office building. This was the headquarters of a global company. People in tailored suits moved in and out of the entrance with confident strides, while sleek black cars pulled up to the curb and disappeared again into traffic. Lily hesitated on the sidewalk across the street, holding the coat closed with one hand while watching the flow of people entering the building. For a moment, she considered leaving the coat with the security desk and quietly walking away. It would be the simplest option. No awkward conversations, No attention. Yet something about the way Ethan Carter had helped her that morning made her feel that disappearing without a proper thank you would be wrong. She waited for the crosswalk signal to change and then walked slowly across the avenue. The marble floor inside the lobby gleamed under soft lighting while a quiet fountain trickled near the center of the room. A receptionist sat behind a curved desk near the elevators, greeting visitors with a professional smile. Lily approached carefully, suddenly very aware of the borrowed coat still wrapped around her shoulders. The receptionist looked up politely. "Good afternoon. How may I assist you?" Lily gave a small, nervous smile. "Hello. I am here to return something that belongs to Mr. Carter." She gently touched the sleeve of the coat as she spoke. The receptionist glanced at the coat and raised her eyebrows slightly with curiosity. "One moment, please," she said as she reached for the phone on her desk. While the receptionist spoke quietly into the receiver, Lily stood in the quiet lobby, trying not to feel out of place among the polished marble and towering glass walls. Upstairs, several floors above the city traffic, Ethan Carter was finishing a conversation with his legal team when his assistant Daniel entered the office doorway with a surprised expression. Daniel waited for a pause in the discussion before speaking. "Sir," he said carefully, "there is someone in the lobby asking to return your coat." Ethan looked up immediately, and for the first time that entire afternoon the steady focus in his expression shifted into something unmistakably curious. Daniel remained standing near the doorway of the executive conference room while the final discussion about legal contracts came to an end. The executives gathered around the polished table exchanged a few final comments before slowly collecting their folders and tablets. Ethan Carter listened with professional attention until the last detail had been settled, but the moment the meeting concluded, he turned toward his assistant with quiet interest. "Did she say her name?" Ethan asked calmly. Daniel glanced down at the note on his tablet. "No, sir," he replied. "She only said she was returning your coat." Ethan nodded once, thoughtful for a brief second. Then he stood from the head of the table and buttoned the front of his suit jacket. "I will handle it," he said simply. The legal team watched with mild curiosity as the CEO stepped out of the conference room and walked down the hallway toward the private elevator. Daniel followed behind, clearly intrigued by the unusual interruption in the middle of such a structured afternoon schedule. The elevator doors opened with a soft sound and carried them smoothly down toward the lobby where Lily Harper still stood beside the reception desk, trying not to feel out of place. The building around her moved with quiet efficiency. Business professionals passed through the marble lobby, speaking in low voices, while security staff greeted regular visitors with polite nods. Lily shifted her weight slightly, holding the coat folded neatly over her arms now that the air inside felt comfortably warm. She could feel the receptionist glancing at her occasionally with friendly curiosity. After a minute, the receptionist set down the phone and offered Lily a reassuring smile. "Someone will be down in just a moment," she said. Lily nodded politely, though her nerves had begun to flutter again. She had not actually expected to meet Ethan Carter a second time. She thought perhaps an assistant would collect the coat, and that would be the end of it. Yet the idea of facing him again suddenly made her heart beat a little faster. The elevator doors at the far end of the lobby opened quietly. Lily did not notice at first, but several employees passing through the lobby did. Conversations softened slightly as a few heads turned. Ethan Carter stepped out of the elevator with his usual calm stride, Daniel following a step behind. He scanned the lobby for only a moment before his eyes settled on the young woman standing near the reception desk, holding a familiar charcoal coat. Lily sensed the shift in the room before she even saw him. When she looked up and recognized the same thoughtful expression from earlier that morning, she felt a small wave of relief mixed with nervousness. Ethan approached with an easy, unhurried pace that somehow made the busy lobby feel less overwhelming. "Good afternoon," he said with a warm smile when he reached her. Lily immediately held out the coat. "Hello again," she replied with a small laugh. "I believe this belongs to you." Ethan accepted the coat but did not immediately put it on. Instead, he draped it over his arm and studied her expression with quiet amusement. "I was wondering if the wind had returned it yet," he said lightly. Lily smiled, relaxing slightly at the familiar tone. "I did not want to keep it longer than necessary," she said. "It helped a lot earlier, though, so thank you again." Ethan nodded. "I am glad it served its purpose." For a brief moment, neither of them spoke as the quiet fountain in the center of the lobby continued its gentle sound. Daniel watched from a respectful distance, clearly curious about the conversation unfolding. Ethan then glanced down at the tote bag hanging from Lily's shoulder and noticed the corner of a sketchbook peeking out beside a few pencils. "You are an artist," he observed calmly. Lily blinked in surprise. She had not expected him to notice something so small. "I try to be," she said modestly. "I had a job interview nearby this morning, actually." Ethan raised an eyebrow with interest. "And how did it go?" Lily hesitated before answering honestly. "I think it went well," she said. "At least I hope so." Ethan nodded thoughtfully, then glanced toward the tall glass windows where the afternoon sunlight reflected across the city streets below. "Sometimes hope is the beginning of very good things," he said quietly. Lily smiled again, feeling the strange sense that the day had not finished surprising her yet. For a moment, the busy lobby of Carter Tower felt strangely quiet around them, as if the endless motion of Manhattan had paused just long enough for two completely different worlds to meet in the middle of the marble floor. Lily Harper shifted the strap of her tote bag slightly on her shoulder, while Ethan Carter held the charcoal coat casually over one arm. Employees passed nearby, but many of them slowed their steps just enough to glance at the unexpected conversation between their CEO and the young woman who clearly did not belong to the usual circle of executives and investors. Lily noticed the curious looks and lowered her voice slightly. "I hope I did not interrupt anything important," she said politely. "You looked like you had a very busy day earlier." Ethan gave a faint smile, the kind that carried a calm confidence built from years of managing larger concerns than a simple schedule change. "Important things can wait for a few minutes," he replied. "Returning a favor is always worth the time." Lily laughed softly, brushing a loose strand of hair away from her face. "I think you already did the favor this morning," she said. "I was just returning the coat." Ethan glanced at the sketchbook corner still visible inside her tote bag again, his curiosity returning. "May I ask something?" he said gently. Lily nodded. "Of course. Do you mind if I see your work?" Lily blinked in surprise at the request. For a moment she hesitated, unsure whether a billionaire executive would truly be interested in the rough pencil drawings she carried around the city every day. But there was no sign of impatience or distraction in Ethan's expression, only genuine curiosity. Slowly she opened the tote bag and pulled out the worn sketchbook, handing it to him with a small nervous smile. "It is mostly city sketches," she explained. "I draw when I have time between jobs." Ethan accepted the sketchbook and opened the first page carefully. The paper inside showed detailed pencil drawings of subway platforms, narrow street corners, cafe windows, and rooftops under evening light. The lines were confident and thoughtful, capturing the rhythm of New York City in quiet moments most people walked past without noticing. Ethan turned several pages slowly while Lily watched with growing anxiety, suddenly aware of every imperfect line she had drawn. After a few seconds, he looked up again with a thoughtful expression. "These are very good," he said calmly. Lily felt her shoulders relax slightly. "Thank you," she replied, clearly relieved. "I have been trying to improve." Ethan closed the sketchbook gently and returned it to her. "You notice things most people miss," he said. "That is a valuable skill." Lily tucked the sketchbook back into her tote bag, still processing the unexpected compliment. Around them, the lobby had resumed its usual movement. The receptionist answered phone calls. The fountain continued its steady trickle. Daniel stood several steps away, pretending to check messages on his tablet while quietly observing the conversation. Ethan glanced briefly toward the tall windows where late afternoon sunlight reflected across the avenue. Then he looked back at Lily with the same thoughtful tone he had used earlier. "Tell me something," he said. "If the interview you mentioned does not work out, what would you do next?" Lily considered the question for a moment before answering honestly. "I would keep drawing," she said. "I might take another part-time job while I look for design work, but I would not stop drawing." Ethan nodded slowly, as if confirming something in his mind. "Determination is more important than perfect timing," he said. Lily smiled again, feeling strangely encouraged by someone she had met only twice in the same day. For the first time, she noticed that the city outside the glass walls had begun shifting toward the soft golden light of late afternoon, and she had the quiet feeling that this unexpected conversation might become the beginning of something neither of them had planned. Lily Harper stood quietly for a moment. After Ethan spoke, holding the strap of her tote bag while the soft golden light from outside filtered through the tall glass windows of Carter Tower. His words about determination lingered in her mind longer than she expected. It was not simply the encouragement itself, but the calm certainty behind it. Ethan Carter spoke the way someone did when they had already seen many dreams succeed and fail and still believed effort mattered. Lily gave a small, thoughtful nod. I suppose that is what keeps most artists going, she said. If we waited for perfect timing, we might never start anything at all. Ethan smiled slightly at that answer. That is a very practical philosophy, he said. Lily laughed softly. It has to be practical. Rent in Manhattan does not wait for inspiration. Ethan nodded with quiet understanding. Daniel, still standing a few steps away, glanced briefly up from his tablet at that comment before returning to the screen, though the faint smile on his face suggested he was listening more closely than he appeared. For a brief moment, the conversation settled into a comfortable pause. The gentle sound of the lobby fountain continued behind them while sunlight reflected across the polished marble floor. Ethan looked toward the tote bag again, as if considering something carefully. Then he spoke with the same calm tone he had used earlier. Carter Global has a small arts foundation that sponsors local exhibitions and community projects, he said. We occasionally work with emerging artists who capture the spirit of the city. Lily blinked in surprise at the unexpected direction of the conversation. That sounds wonderful, she said. I did not realize your company supported art programs. Ethan nodded. Creativity shapes cities as much as business does, he explained. Architecture, design, illustration, photography. They all influence how people experience a place. Lily listened carefully, feeling both curious and slightly uncertain about where the conversation might lead. Ethan continued. We are currently preparing a small exhibition next season focused on urban perspectives. Artists who see the city from personal angles instead of traditional skyline views. He paused briefly before adding, Your sketches remind me of that idea. Lily felt a mixture of excitement and disbelief. You mean like gallery work? She asked cautiously. Ethan nodded once. Something like that. Lily shifted her weight slightly, clearly unsure how to respond. I have never shown my work in a gallery before, she admitted. Most of these drawings are just things I do while riding the subway or sitting in cafés. Ethan gave a quiet, thoughtful smile. Sometimes the most honest work begins that way. Daniel finally looked up from his tablet. Sir, the planning team for the foundation exhibition is meeting later this week, he said carefully, clearly understanding where the conversation might be heading. Ethan nodded slightly without looking away from Lily. Then perhaps we should add one more conversation to the schedule, he replied calmly. Lily felt her heart beat a little faster as the meaning slowly settled in. Are you saying you would like me to show my sketches to your foundation team? She asked. Ethan did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the worn sketchbook still resting inside her tote bag, and then back at her with the same thoughtful expression he had carried since the moment they met on the windy sidewalk that morning. I am saying that sometimes opportunity appears in unexpected places, he said. Lily smiled softly, realizing that the strange morning that began with an awkward gust of wind might quietly be opening a door she had never imagined walking through. For several seconds, Lily Harper simply stood there absorbing the meaning behind Ethan Carter's words while the quiet rhythm of the lobby continued around them. The possibility he had just suggested felt so far removed from her ordinary routine that her mind struggled to catch up with it. Only that morning she had been worrying about subway fare, job interviews, and rent due at the end of the month. Now one of the most influential executives in the city was casually suggesting that her sketches might belong in an exhibition connected to his company's arts foundation. Lily let out a small breath and shook her head slightly with a soft laugh of disbelief. I am not sure the word opportunity quite covers what you were suggesting, she said honestly. Ethan watched her reaction with a calm expression that suggested he was used to people being surprised by unexpected possibilities. Sometimes the first step is simply letting someone else see what you can do, he replied. Lily looked down at the sketchbook inside her tote bag again. The worn corners of the cover suddenly felt very different knowing the drawings inside had caught the attention of someone like him. I would be honored to show my work, she said carefully. I just want to be honest that most of these sketches were drawn on subway rides or during coffee breaks. They are not exactly gallery pieces. Ethan smiled slightly. The city itself is not polished either, he said. That is part of its beauty. Daniel stepped forward quietly, already understanding the direction the conversation had taken. "If you would like, I can arrange a time for the foundation team to review her portfolio later this week," he said professionally. Ethan nodded once in agreement. "That sounds reasonable." Lily glanced between the two men with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "I do not want to take up too much of anyone's time," she said modestly. Daniel gave a reassuring smile. "Our foundation exists specifically to discover new perspectives. Reviewing artwork is never a waste of time." Lily felt her shoulders relax slightly at that response. Around them, the afternoon crowd in the lobby continued to move steadily through the building, though a few employees still glanced curiously at the unusual conversation taking place near the reception desk. Ethan then reached into his coat pocket and removed a slim silver pen before gently tapping the edge of Lily's sketchbook. "May I make a small suggestion?" he asked. Lily nodded immediately. "Of course." Ethan opened the sketchbook to the page where Lily had drawn the skyline at sunset earlier that week. The lines captured the towers and bridges in soft pencil shading, with a small handwritten note in the corner describing the view from a Brooklyn rooftop. Ethan studied the drawing briefly before handing the sketchbook back to her. "Keep drawing scenes like this," he said. "Moments people normally walk past." Lily looked at the page again and then back at him. "I will," she promised. Daniel typed a few quick notes into his tablet before speaking again. "Miss Harper, if you are available Thursday afternoon, our foundation team will be meeting at 3 o'clock. You could bring your sketchbook and we could take a proper look." Lily nodded slowly, still processing how quickly the situation had changed. "Thursday works for me," she said. Ethan gave a satisfied nod. "Then it seems the wind did more than interrupt your morning," he said with quiet humor. Lily laughed softly at that. "I suppose it did," she replied. As the conversation began to wind down, Lily realized something else had shifted as well. The intimidating marble lobby no longer felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt like the place where a completely ordinary day had quietly turned into the beginning of a new chapter she had never planned but was suddenly eager to explore. Thursday arrived with the crisp clarity of early autumn sunlight spreading across Manhattan, and Lily Harper stepped out of the subway station, holding her sketchbook a little tighter than usual. For the past 2 days, she had replayed the strange events of that windy morning over and over again, still half convinced that the conversation inside Carter Tower had been some kind of misunderstanding. Yet the calendar reminder on her phone was real, and the message Daniel had sent confirming the meeting time was also very real. 3 o'clock. Carter Global Arts Foundation Review. Lily had spent most of Wednesday evening sitting at the small wooden table in her apartment, carefully flipping through every page of her sketchbook. Some drawings she sharpened with new pencil lines. Others she left exactly as they were, deciding that the imperfect sketches carried the honest energy of the moments when she had drawn them. Now, as she walked the familiar blocks toward Fifth Avenue again, the city looked slightly different to her. It was the same Manhattan she had sketched for years, yet the buildings seemed to hold quiet possibilities she had never considered before. When Carter Tower appeared ahead of her, its glass surface reflecting the bright sky, Lily paused for a moment on the sidewalk, just as she had 2 days earlier. This time there was no rushing wind. The flags above the entrance moved gently in a calm afternoon breeze, and the street traffic flowed steadily through the intersection. Lily took a slow breath and crossed the avenue. Inside the lobby, the same polished marble floors and soft lighting greeted her, though today the space felt less intimidating than it had before. The receptionist looked up and immediately recognized her. "Good afternoon, Miss Harper," she said with a friendly smile. "Mr. Carter's assistant asked that you come right up when you arrive." Lily nodded gratefully. "Thank you." Within a few moments, she was standing inside the elevator as it carried her smoothly toward the upper floors of the building. The quiet hum of the elevator seemed louder than usual because of her nervous anticipation. She glanced down at her sketchbook again, running her fingers lightly over the worn cover. When the elevator doors opened, Daniel was already waiting in the hallway with his tablet tucked under one arm. "Miss Harper, welcome back," he said politely. Lily smiled. "Thank you for arranging the meeting." Daniel gestured down the corridor where a glass conference room overlooked the city skyline. "The foundation team is gathering inside," he explained. "They are eager to see your work." As they walked toward the room, Lily could see several people seated around a long table through the glass wall. Some studied printed materials, while others spoke quietly with one another. At the far end of the table, Ethan Carter stood beside the window, the late afternoon sun reflecting behind him as he spoke with one of the foundation directors. When he noticed Lily approaching through the glass, he paused mid-conversation and gave her a small, welcoming nod. The gesture was simple but reassuring, and Lily felt a wave of calm replace the nervous tension she had carried all morning. Daniel opened the door and stepped aside. "Everyone," he said professionally, "Miss Lily Harper has arrived." The conversations in the room softened as the foundation team turned their attention toward the young artist standing quietly at the doorway with a sketchbook in her hands. Lily took one step into the room, realizing that the drawings she had created during ordinary subway rides and quiet cafe afternoons were about to be seen by people who believe those small moments of the city might actually matter. The room remained quiet for a moment after Lily Harper stepped inside, the attention of the Carter Global Arts Foundation team settling gently around her. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows behind the conference table, casting a warm reflection across the polished wood surface where several directors now studied the young artist with open curiosity. Ethan Carter stood near the head of the table with a calm expression, his presence steady but not imposing, as if he intended the moment to belong entirely to Lily. "Please come in," he said with a reassuring tone. Lily walked forward slowly and took the empty seat Daniel had prepared near the center of the table. She placed her sketchbook carefully in front of her, suddenly aware that the worn cover and slightly bent corners told the story of many subway rides and late-night drawings at her kitchen table. One of the foundation directors, a woman named Margaret Lynn who specialized in community art programs, leaned forward with interest. "Mr. Carter mentioned that your sketches capture everyday moments in the city," she said kindly. "We would love to see them." Lily nodded and opened the sketchbook with careful hands. The first pages revealed quick pencil sketches of subway passengers reading newspapers, a violin player performing on a busy platform, and a small coffee shop window glowing warmly on a rainy evening. The room remained silent as the team slowly leaned closer to look. Another director, an older man with silver hair named Thomas Green, adjusted his glasses while studying the details. "These are very observant drawings," he said thoughtfully. "You are not only drawing buildings. You are drawing the rhythm of the city." Lily felt a small wave of relief hearing those words. "That is what I try to do," she explained quietly. New York moves so fast that people often forget to notice the small moments happening around them. Margaret turned another page and paused on a sketch of the Brooklyn Bridge at sunrise, the delicate pencil lines capturing the early morning light reflecting on the East River. "This one is beautiful," she said softly. "When did you draw it?" Lily smiled slightly. 5:30 in the morning, she answered. "I was on my way to a cafe job, and the subway stopped briefly on the bridge. The light looked different that day, so I tried to remember it before the train moved again." A few people around the table nodded with appreciation. Ethan watched the exchange quietly from his seat, clearly satisfied that the foundation team was responding naturally to Lily's work. Thomas closed the sketchbook gently and looked across the table at the others. "I believe this perspective fits perfectly with the exhibition theme we discussed last month," he said. "The city through human moments rather than distant skylines." Margaret agreed with a thoughtful nod. "I can already imagine several pieces framed in the gallery space." Lily blinked in surprise, still trying to process how quickly the conversation had shifted from curiosity to genuine interest. Ethan finally spoke again with a calm voice that carried quiet encouragement. "Lily, if you are comfortable with the idea, the foundation would like to invite you to develop a small collection of these city sketches for the upcoming exhibition." Lily looked around the table, seeing the welcoming expressions from the team members and realizing that this opportunity was becoming real. For the first time since she began drawing the streets of New York, the scenes she had captured in pencil were about to be shared with the world beyond her sketchbook. For a moment, Lily Harper could not speak. The quiet invitation from the Carter Global Arts Foundation team echoed in her mind as she looked around the conference table at the people who were now discussing her sketches with genuine enthusiasm. Just 2 days earlier, those same drawings had been nothing more than a private habit she carried through subway rides and quiet afternoons in cafes. Now they were being considered for a professional exhibition inside one of the most influential corporate art programs in the city. Lily placed her hand lightly on the edge of the sketchbook as if reassuring herself that the moment was real. I would be honored to create work for the exhibition, she said finally, her voice steady even though her heart was racing with excitement. Margaret Lynn smiled warmly across the table. Wonderful, she replied. The exhibition opens in about 6 weeks, which gives you time to develop several additional pieces if you wish. We do not want you to feel rushed, but we do encourage artists to capture moments that feel authentic to them. Lily nodded thoughtfully, already imagining new scenes she might draw during early mornings and late evenings around the city. Subway musicians, park benches in autumn light, the quiet glow of corner diners after midnight. The possibilities began forming in her mind almost instantly. Thomas Green leaned forward slightly and added, "Our gallery space is designed to highlight personal perspectives of the city. Your work fits that concept beautifully." Ethan Carter remained quietly attentive throughout the discussion, watching Lily's growing confidence as the foundation team spoke about framing options, display layouts, and promotional materials for the upcoming exhibition. At one point, Daniel stepped forward with a small folder containing preliminary documents and placed it gently beside Lily's sketchbook. This simply outlines the exhibition timeline and support we provide for participating artists, he explained. Lily opened the folder briefly, seeing notes about studio resources, printing assistance, and gallery preparation. The level of support surprised her. She had expected perhaps a casual review of her drawings, not a professional collaboration that treated her work with such respect. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "I promise I will do my best to create something worthy of the opportunity." Ethan spoke again then, his tone calm but encouraging. "The opportunity already exists because of your perspective," he said. "The drawings you brought today were not trying to impress anyone. They were simply honest observations. That honesty is what people respond to." Lily smiled softly at that reminder. She closed the sketchbook carefully and looked out the tall window behind the conference table where the late afternoon light was beginning to shift toward evening. The skyline she had drawn so many times now stretched across the horizon, familiar yet suddenly full of new meaning. Margaret stood and extended her hand across the table. "Welcome to the exhibition, Miss Harper." Lily shook her hand, still slightly amazed by the words. As the meeting slowly concluded and the foundation directors gathered their notes, Ethan stepped toward the window beside Lily. From this height, the city looked almost peaceful, the traffic below reduced to quiet movement between the avenues. Lily glanced at him and gave a grateful smile. "I still cannot believe a simple sketchbook brought me here," she admitted. Ethan looked out at the skyline for a moment before answering thoughtfully. "Sometimes the smallest moments carry the most unexpected doors," he said. Lily nodded gently, realizing that the strange gust of wind 2 mornings earlier had quietly changed the direction of her life in ways she never could have predicted. 6 weeks passed more quickly than Lily Harper could have imagined, and on a cool Friday evening the gallery hall inside Carter Global's Arts Wing glowed with soft light and quiet anticipation. Large white panels lined the walls where framed sketches now hung in careful sequence, each one capturing a small moment of New York City exactly as Lily had seen it during countless ordinary days. There was the subway musician beneath a flickering platform lamp, the early morning bridge rising through pale sunlight, the coffee shop window glowing against a rainy sidewalk, and the quiet silhouette of a street vendor packing up his cart at dusk. Guests moved slowly through the gallery space, pausing to study the drawings while gentle music played in the background. Some visitors spoke softly about the details of the city scenes while others simply stood in thoughtful silence. Near the center of the room, Lily stood beside Margaret Lynn, still slightly overwhelmed by the sight of her work displayed on the walls with professional lighting and elegant frames. A small plaque beside the entrance read "Urban Moments" by Lily Harper. Margaret leaned closer and spoke with a warm smile. "People are responding exactly the way we hoped," she said. "Your drawings remind them to slow down and notice the city again." Lily looked across the gallery at the guests studying her work and felt a quiet wave of gratitude she could barely describe. A month earlier, she had been sketching those same scenes alone on subway rides, never imagining they would one day fill a room like this. Across the gallery, Ethan Carter stood speaking with several foundation sponsors who had come to support the exhibition. Yet his attention occasionally returned to Lily as he watched visitors pause in front of her drawings with thoughtful expressions. After a few minutes, he excused himself from the conversation and walked slowly across the room toward her. "Congratulations," he said warmly when he reached her side. "The exhibition is already receiving wonderful feedback." Lily laughed softly, still a little amazed by the entire evening. "I feel like I am walking through someone else's dream," she admitted. Ethan glanced at the framed drawings around the room. "Dreams usually begin with small moments people almost overlook," he replied. Lily nodded thoughtfully and then looked toward one particular drawing hanging near the window. It showed a windy Manhattan sidewalk with pedestrians rushing past tall buildings, while a lone figure stood near the corner, holding a coat around her shoulders. She had drawn it late one night during the second week of preparing the exhibition, realizing that the moment which started everything deserved to be remembered in pencil like the rest of the city scenes. Ethan noticed the drawing as well and smiled slightly. "That one seems familiar," he said with quiet humor. Lily smiled back. "Some moments change everything," she replied. Outside the gallery windows, the lights of Manhattan shimmered across the evening skyline, while visitors continued moving through the exhibition, discovering the quiet beauty of ordinary city life captured in graphite and paper. And as Lily stood there beside the man who had first stepped forward on a windy morning when she needed a little dignity and kindness, she realized that the city she had been drawing for years had finally drawn her into a new story of her own. On a windy morning in Manhattan, a simple moment of kindness begins a life-changing journey when a powerful CEO steps forward to protect a struggling young artist from an embarrassing situation on a busy city street. What starts as a small act of dignity soon unfolds into one of those unforgettable millionaire stories where compassion, opportunity, and determination quietly reshape two very different lives. The young artist who spends her days sketching subway platforms, cafés, and quiet corners of the city never expects that the successful CEO who offered his coat will later discover her work and see something special within it. Through an unexpected meeting inside a towering corporate headquarters, the powerful CEO recognizes the honesty in her drawings and opens the door to an Art Foundation exhibition that celebrates the unnoticed beauty of New York City. As the story unfolds, viewers witness how a determined young artist continues to follow her passion despite uncertainty, while the influential CEO proves that leadership is not only about wealth, but also about recognizing talent and encouraging courage. Their paths cross again through an opportunity that transforms ordinary sketches into gallery artwork admired by visitors from across the city, turning quiet subway drawings into a celebrated exhibition that reminds everyone to slow down and see the human moments hidden within the rush of urban life. This heartfelt narrative captures the spirit of true millionaire stories, where respect and kindness matter more than status, showing how a thoughtful gesture from a successful CEO can inspire confidence in a young artist who never imagined her work would be seen beyond her sketchbook. As the exhibition opens and guests admire drawings filled with warmth, sunlight, and everyday life, the connection between the powerful CEO and the young artist reflects the deeper message behind many timeless millionaire stories, proving that opportunity often appears in the most unexpected moments. From a gust of wind on a crowded avenue to a gallery filled with city sketches, this story reveals how compassion, talent, and perseverance can change a future, making it one of those uplifting millionaire stories that celebrate dignity, creativity, and the quiet power of believing in someone's potential. Character 1: 38-year-old white male billionaire CEO Ethan Carter. Tall, confident posture, tailored charcoal business suit with white shirt and dark tie. Calm, intelligent expression, short, neatly styled dark hair, clean-shaven. Realistic cinematic lighting, front-view portrait, professional Manhattan executive presence. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. Character 2: 24-year-old white female, struggling artist Lily Harper. Gentle, thoughtful face. Natural light makeup, shoulder-length brown hair slightly wavy. Soft, expressive eyes, simple light blue. Cotton dress with canvas tote bag and sketchbook. Front view portrait, realistic cinematic lighting. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration.